make this thing called a monk pack. It's a keto granola bar. It's 1 gram of sugar, 2 grams of net carbs, 4 grams of protein, plant-based, grain-free, gluten-free, coconut cocoa chip. Here's a full one. I don't know if you guys eat those or not. Not too bad. I've eaten them for a while. I went to Warrensburg today. And for those of you that were quick to watch, this video is a little late, but I'm going to go ahead and make this one now because I had uploaded one prior. Didn't really like how it came out. I'll just give you a ballpark. Basically, there was some technical difficulties. I had a camera mount that didn't work. And when I was editing on my phone, one of the disadvantages is that any shakiness or it's easier to overlook detail issues. And when I finally uploaded it and the 1080p version became available on YouTube, then it was all screwball. Everything was shaking, slightly out of focus. I don't like it. And I thought to myself, oh, well, it's not a big deal. It's a throwaway. But I thought, no, there's a certain level of professionalism I need to have when I'm doing these things. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to hold back on it and go back to just the kind of talking head sort of format I had. I know that I had uploaded one for the Nelson Atkins when I went the other day, and that was fun, but I don't want to make that the norm. There's a reason why I have TikTok and other things. It did raise a really good question in my mind as to how to better management my content creation so thematically aspects can be expected on certain ones. And of course, they're going to cross-pollinate to some degree, but I need to remember that for TikTok, a lot of it is very much the experience, the going somewhere and doing something in that zone, in that moment. And that's not to say that isn't part of this journal aspect, but this is for stuff that probably wouldn't normally be part of my marketing aspect as a working artist or as somebody who interacts with a lot of really cool things. So in this circumstance, I'll put a few overlays of some of the footage I took earlier, but I went down to Warrensburg. Today was my mom's birthday, and that was fun. It was real simple, real low-key. That was very cool. And then after that, I had some time to go to... They were, out of the blue, they were like, oh, hey, here's a little bit of a extra Christmas present for you, just some cash. And I thought, oh, well, that's cool. So I went and I stopped by my favorite bakery there in town. Actually, my favorite bakery everywhere. Green Truck Bakery. And if you're ever in Warrensburg down on Pine Street, stop by there. It's amazing. It's absolutely phenomenal. But I wandered over to Those Were the Days, which is one of my favorite places to go and kind of look around at things. Now, even though I like going there a lot, the original video I had done talked a little bit about, and because for some reason this was on my mind, it's constantly on my mind, but the whole upcycling, recycling, that whole thing, especially being an artist. I'm going to show you guys something here. This is one of the items I picked up. This was from booth 141, the 1984 GoBot school pencil bag, as is, for $5. Look at this thing of beauty. It is official. It's from Monogram Products, which is one of the licensors that did stuff for Tonka. And I love it. It's just that super rubbery kind of 80s vinyl, shiny stuff. The typography is in great condition. There's no cracking on the screen printing. Little bit of metallic silver on liter 1. Unlike a lot of other people today that'll say they hated the GoBots, I loved them because they were robots. That's all that need to be said. And I picked up a few other things, but those are unimportant right now. I got to thinking about a lot of when I was down there with my mom and dad, like, going out to dinner or lunch in this case, wasn't bad. There's a whole bunch of other mental therapy stuff to it, but, I'm happy to still have them both and to still be able to celebrate time being around them, that sort of thing. It's not always the smooth sailing, but I do what I can, and that's what matters. I guess that's what therapy is for. So, but during the conversation, we somehow got around to talking about, I don't even remember how this happened because my parents are not the biggest environmentalists. And I really try to be. I don't know that I'm doing everything that I could, but I certainly try. And one of the issues that I think about is, as an artist, I will create a lot of things: art, waste, and byproduct. Byproduct doesn't always fall into waste because sometimes it can be upcycled back into something or recycled, hypothetically. For those of you that don't know, this nation, the U.S., the U.S., it's the drunkest way I can say that, the United States of America, is stuck in a conundrum where we manufacture a lot of things. I see it from, form up in every sort of format, whether you're at Walmart or whether you're, at a state fair. There's just so much stuff we make, from paper plates to ketchup packets to whatever, to things like this. Now, I found this one in good condition, but there were no doubt, I would say thousands, if not tens of thousands of these that back in 1984 would have been on store shelves, and now they are more than likely in landfills. Very few of those things got shredded and remade into anything that benefited society. They're laying somewhere, possibly rotting away within the next 1,000 years, long after anyone watching this video will be dead. And I thought about that when I went to go pick up some art supplies, these markers right here. They're wonderful, and the markers are refillable. And I am very much somebody that believes in refilling and reutilizing whatever I can find and whatever I can do. And I'll use those nibs like crazy. But what happens is, this is one of the old refills for Copic, and the newer ones are these thin jobs that are they look like pens themselves. Now this holds what is this? How many actual ounces are in this thing? I used to know this stuff like the back of my hand. At any rate, it only holds a few fluid ounces in here. I want to say this was 5. I don't know why this is going. It's 25 cc's. President Carter, we failed you. So this is what the old ones were. They had like a little measurement, you can kind of see it, and they had more. Now they charge you more for skinnier ones. You got to do better, Copic. But thankfully there's a lot of other doppelgangers out there that do markers, and that's a whole nother video I'll get into at some point in time. But they all have waste. Now, compared to one-off use markers, which I don't use, I haven't had any for a long time. I used to have some Prismacolor ones, I believe, or some brand that I didn't like because it was just like, oh good lord, this is never going to work. I'm going to end up wasting more time and wasting more materials just making art. But then it hit me, which is something I hadn't really thought about until I went to the vintage store. Those were the days. Usually I would go there week after week after week. I used to do that a lot when I was younger, back in my college days especially. And there's always hidden treasures to be found there. I found a few today. And one of the things that I really sort of have some real problems trying to figure out is this. Sometimes when I go there, I'll find works of art, ceramics, other things that are manufactured that at some point in time, whether they were made by hand by a specific artist or mass-produced, some of them have made it into these vintage stores and may find life for maybe another generation or two or whatever. But the vast majority of those things are in landfills somewhere, or they've been broken, or they've been put through the ringer in some way. And it didn't leave my mind that, in the crossover for this, although this is a little macabre, I just want you guys to kind of bear with me on this. My parents are getting older, and I know that at some point, hopefully not for many more years, I will no doubt, with my siblings, have to figure out what the hell we're going to do with everything in their house. And I've spoken about this in previous videos, how much stuff they really have. My mom is also a science fiction nut, so there's all that sort of thing. And I've noticed over the years, I've started inheriting a few things, like she gave me her Star Trek comics. I've got her USS Enterprise hanging over here, different things like that. And although my mom was not like a super nerdcore sort of Trekker or Trekkie, I forget which one is really applied to them, she did like a lot of stuff, and she still owns a lot of stuff. She has some X-Files stuff, things like that. I'm not opposed to owning or having that stuff. I think my brother's a bigger fan, so he'll probably take that stuff on. But there's a bunch of other stuff in the house that I wonder, where the hell is this going to go? What are we going to do? What happens after a while? There's so many people now doing vintage, doing car boot, doing vintage estate sales and stuff, I really do wonder how many times can we recycle something or resell it, or what happens to it after a while. Especially considering that so many things made even in the last 30 to 40 years have been sort of subpar. They're not meant for longevity. I have a refrigerator upstairs that the guy that came and repaired it said, hang on to this, because compared to the new ones, this is going to outlast you. As long as you keep it running right, clean it, and repair it when it needs it, it'll keep on going. He couldn't say the same thing for the newer ones that come out that have all the monitors and other extras and cameras indoor. Who the hell cares? But that does make all those components more expensive, and then people just wanting to buy new things and get rid of the other one. Well, then where does that thing go? And that's what the whole aspect was that went through my head, was where does everything go? It's almost, and this is going to sound really weird, I almost kind of understand why there are people that gravitate toward having only digital concepts as what they own, quote unquote, or subscribing to a service that would provide you with that. A fair amount of the newer games that I've bought have been nothing but downloads of software. I have some that exist only that way. There was a game that came out a few years ago called Super Mario Brothers RPG. I don't own the cartridge of that. I think my brother does. But I have a copy of it when it was available for a little while on the Nintendo Wii in their eShop. And that's still on my Wii. That's the only way I have it. Nintendo doesn't license their stuff out to places like Steam or anything else like that. It doesn't develop for anything else. It's strictly for their platforms. And unless they update it, at some point in time, that stuff goes away. So there is a lot of people that belong to the niche. I never know how to pronounce some of these words, that collects physical media. I'm definitely one of them. But for every person like myself that will be the guardian of these things for a little while, just like this will stay with me. I'm not getting rid of this. I'm not going to do anything more with it. But what does happen to this? Who am I leaving this to? Who cares about this? Maybe another GoBot creator or a collector. I mean, maybe somebody else that just likes weird things from the 80s. I don't know. But I know nobody's going to want an all empty refill. I know that there's going to be things that just wear out. A few videos back, I showed a digital camera that I had, my old Philips, which is sitting back here on the shelf. Many of those are also either destroyed, been upcycled or recycled or crushed or put into a landfill. Maybe what I'm worried about is just where we're heading. And there's very much a helplessness to that. I know there are companies out there attempting to find good solutions to this. And I think that there's options. There's definitely a chance. But I also get disheartened when I see things like all of the raw garbage that gets dumped into the Amazon. What our neighborhoods look like around here and across the U.S. I've driven enough places to see what urban areas, even some suburban areas, look like, and how little we care. Now, a lot of that could be attributed to the general sense of malaise that affects a lot of us in this country and even across the world in different circumstances. If you're not making a lot of money, if you have mental issues and problems you got to work through, maybe there's other problems that I can't even begin to fathom that people are enduring. We'll settle on what we have and then hope that everything straightens out in the end. But at some point, there almost seems to be this issue that's arising that we don't want to rise to meet the issues that will affect people down the way. I don't know if we were always like that or not. Or maybe just because we've invented things that are far more toxic to the environment and thusly to ourselves, now it's become pertinent that we need to do something about that. But the environment is something of a separate subject matter to what I'm getting at here. I do wonder, what does it mean in years to come? Some things in my collection were from people that passed on, or people that maybe got out of a hobby. I have a box. It's still sitting upstairs in one of the closets. It's about 2 foot by 2 foot by 3 foot, and it is filled with Star Wars figures on the card. These are the Power of the Force card ones. And I know that, speaking to any collectors out there, they may not be worth a lot. But that particular collection has stayed together in that box for a reason. At some point in time, when I build the add-on to the studio here, there's going to be a small area that I'm going to display those in. You see, those figures aren't mine. They belong to a friend of mine's husband who passed away some years ago. And he wasn't the biggest Star Wars fan, but he was a Star Wars fan. And when she was cleaning out a lot of the stuff that she was holding on to that was still about her husband and basically what life she had with him, this was a collection. She didn't know what to do with it. She reached out to me and she asked me if I wanted them. And without hesitation, I said, yeah. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, and they've been in storage since. But I have an idea, and I know what I want to do with it now that I have somewhere to put stuff. It's bittersweet because I want that collection to stay together, because in a perfect world, if something happened to me, I would like to think that somewhere a collector would be able to inherit what I have and keep it together and do something with it. But that's a fairy tale, isn't it? It's a fable. Nothing lasts forever. And sometimes coming to terms with that, understanding where we stand in the greater scheme of things, and being able to accept that change is inevitable and things are going to go away. Nothing lasts forever. But occasionally, just like this little pen bag here, you know, not to get too Toy Story on you guys, but sometimes it gets lucky and it finds somebody who cares for it and sees it. This was sitting in a little jewelry case. It's actually right next to a small Star Wars comic. So I picked them both up. I already had that one, but it was in really good condition. And the more I thought about it, I was like, this is going to go in a small case with some of the GoBots I had as a child, because I never got this when I was a kid. I saw other kids with this. They also came in blue, I think in green, had different characters on it. And I love that. But I have to come to terms with the fact that just like I'm thinking about what I'm going to be doing with a lot of my parents' stuff in the coming years, hopefully way down the line, not anytime soon, what am I going to do with that stuff? Where does it go? What happens with it? And then someday, what do I do with my stuff? I've already had collector friends that have said, you know, at some point I probably want to just get out of this and sell it before I get too old and I can't enjoy my life. That's fair. That's absolutely fair. But I think everybody can do what they want with that sort of thing. There are people, really, really, really rich people, that have dozens of cars, multiple homes. And I saw a TikTok the other day of people that do urban exploring. I used to love doing that stuff. And they found what I think was a small modern day castle. And it was in England, but I don't remember what part. And it had belonged to somebody who was connected to Winston Churchill. When you go in the home, it's gorgeous. The roof's caved in. The stairwell is rotting away. Floors are starting to creak and fall in. But they could still make it to the upstairs area where rain was starting to proliferate. And from the looks of it, it's very much abandoned in the intent that the family was going to come back. And at some point, they just didn't. There's photos of the previous owner, his wife, his grandchildren. I think they're pet dogs. There's a lot of linens. The beds are still somewhat made. Of course, over time, people have gotten in there, destroyed things. Things are in disarray. Things have been stolen, probably. But for the most part, a lot of what they had last left is still there. And eventually, nature will reclaim it. That's what it does. It's kind of alarming how quickly, if left alone, a home can be completely eradicated within 10 years. The stuff will still be there. It's just a lot of growth will overtake it. And I think that's probably the best metaphor for how temporary everything we enjoy in life is. And it's led me to understand that I could sit here and worry about a lot of the things that I do. Worry exactly where my collection might end up, or these refillable, disposable bottles I use for inks or any of the other stuff is, where it's going to end up. Or I could focus on living life and trying to figure out how best to live it. That was always a mental health challenge for me. I always would hold back. I'd save things. I have reams of cardboard. Oh, I might have to ship something. I have all these other things I'll save because I just never know when I'm going to need it. That can lead to a hoarding situation really quickly, but that can also lead to indecisiveness in life as to how to proceed with things, how to move forward. Yeah. It's a very, very strange thing to deal with, but I think it's something that everyone deals with. I think that when the time comes, there will be a point where, whether it's through the rise of digital aspects or just even a cultural shift across the planet as we know it, there may come a time where mass production of items doesn't make sense in the same way that we have it now. In some ways, I really hope that industries will begin to understand that a proliferation of items isn't the same as making items that are great, that are good. But if that's to come true, an ideological shift needs to happen in making enough money, not all the money. That's the real problem. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. I want to go ahead and upload this thing, and I did a good job here at 22 minutes. I think it was much better than I thought it was going to be. And I think it's a little bit more enjoyable than this last video was. So, anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in my next journal. That should have come off so much more smoothly. I should have been like, I'll catch you in the next journal. Oh my God, I'm just making this super cheese awkward. They probably do you better if you don't eat like, 5 or 6 of them in a day. It's probably counterproductive. See you in the next one.